Today we're talking two experienced yoga teachers about your yoga teacher training, and we're going to give some tips about what we've done to really effectively set dates and rates to help our training be a success. So, Claire, I'm going to ask you about your rates in 1 second. Are you ready to become a yoga trainer? Welcome to the Yoga Trainer Fast Track.
We help experienced yoga teachers become trainers in their very own yoga teacher training school.
If you wish it was easier to have your own training, we share tips and tutorials to make your wish come true.
If you're an experienced yoga teacher, like and subscribe to get free resources so we keep making more videos. With that being said, let's get started.
Tell me about how you set your dates and rates. Let's start with dates first.
So dates were really simple at my studio because we use a modular format. The 200-hour training is divided into 4 50-hour modules, which just correlates with the seasons. And we took a year for students to move through a complete 200-hour training. So I knew every year that in January, I was going to be teaching the Enlightened Life module of our teacher training program. We would usually do that January, February, March, and then by April, I'll be moving into the Anatomy of a Healthy Life, which means by early fall, we're moving into Finding Calm in the Age of Speed, and then our final module of the year, which would take us right up until about Christmas break, would be the past, present, and future of yoga. So I knew that the training schedule was going to be solid and something that was reliable year after year. And then I could work my workshops and other events around that existing schedule because it was my most lucrative revenue stream. So that had to come first. And then the only thing to consider with that would fluctuate a little bit year to year would be the dates for the long weekend. So even though they're on the same day, sometimes Easter falls at a different time. And we were very courteous to people. We wanted them to have time with their family and respect their other commitments in their life so that you could take a year to learn your teacher training. This is something we could revisit, constantly every couple of weeks. It was important in their life, but it wasn't overtaking their life. That's just what worked in my community. And the only thing to consider would be those long weekends. It worked really well for me. How do you have any tips on how you scheduled your trainings?
Well, I totally agree with you. Nobody wants to do a training on a long weekend, at least in my experience. I think that makes a lot of sense the way you had your regular schedule. When it comes to the dates and then tying it into the rates of your training, the other date that I would be considering, your early registration date is going to come in. So for every training, you're likely going to have an early registration rate and a regular rate. And for me, I didn't have a studio. So I would rent the art gallery and I would hold my training there. And so for me in the summertime, I actually would do 100 hours of training in the summer. That would be an intensive format. And that was about $6,000 rent I would be paying to the art gallery. So I had to give the art gallery half of that up front and the other half at the time of the training. So my early registration date was usually the week before I had to make that payment to the art gallery of $3,000. So it did two things. It let me know whether I had enough students to run the training. And then it also put some money in my pocket so that I wasn't out of pocket for the expense of the art gallery rental. So that worked out really well for me, having the dates and the rates connected to each other. Do you do an early registration rate?
Well, not when we run it in a modular format, it being the teacher training, because people they know in advance. You don't need as much lead time to ask people for money because they know in advance that come April, they're starting another module. In September, they're starting another module. So there's going to be a payment that's due. Now, if people wanted to pay up front for the entire year-long course, there would be a small discount for that. Overall, we just worked in the modular format and it worked really well. But I like your idea of the early registration date. And I guess that has to be a fairly substantial discount to be enticing so that people pay that rate, because you need information from that. Like you said, you need to know if your training is going to run, you've got enough people interested, and that way you're making the deposit for your end of the commitment, not out of pocket. So I really love that. What did that look like?
For me, the early rate was usually like sometimes $300 or $400, so that people wanted to register. My personal preference was I also offered a payment plan because it was like an intensive format for that 100 hours. Those who registered early, sometimes they would be registering like 3 months early. That would be my early registration. So they're committing with a deposit or with their first installment. And I didn't do a huge difference between the early rate full payment or the early rate installment plan, because I just like, it's part of my own preference. I just feel bad. Like if someone doesn't have the money to pay the full amount, I don't want to even ding them even more to pay in installments. Like it just feels unfair.
Yeah.
So for me, there wasn't a big difference between, like, it was $50 difference or maybe $100 on the whole thing between the early rate full payment and the early rate installments. But then it would be like $300 or $400 difference between the full rate, because I really want to entice people to sign up.
Yeah, definitely. So then that's an indicator that for trainers, if you are setting your dates and you're setting your rates thinking those are two separate tasks, they really do need to combine, because your rates can influence your dates and vice versa. So good information, good tip on that.
And then it all ties together. Most of the trainers who use our Yoga Trainer Fast Track program, they're also learning how to deliver the program the first time. If someone's not using the program, they may actually still be planning the program, but you want to get your registration up. And this is what our new trainers do. They get the registration up usually 2 or 3 months in advance of the start date of the training. And then once registration is open, and they're promoting it, the wheels are turning to promote. Then they start learning the trainer lesson plans and how they're going to deliver the training. So that planning comes after you start promoting, because you need that lead time to promote a big ticket item like a teacher training. If you want more information on that, just leave a comment. Let us know what you think about dates and rates, and we'll see you in the next video.